And there are a couple of neat ways you can test fish oil. If, those of you listening, you may take a fish oil every day, just as a part of your, sort of nutritional supplement regimen, whatever. And what you can do is you can poke a hole in the fish oil supplement, 3 or 4 pills maybe, squirt it into a styrofoam cup. And it sounds a little silly, but you can do this and just wait. And usually, probably 70-80% of the products that you buy at the store, no joke, they'll start eating the styrofoam cup. They'll dissolve it completely.
Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolfe Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had another great conversation with Dr. Jim Stringham. We discussed omega-3s again, but this time in relation to a study that was reported widely across the media about the potential risks, specifically cardiovascular risks associated with omega-3s. And Dr. Stringham and I kind of break down that study, talk about what we can learn from it, what can help us inform our patients about it. So please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. We've been partnering with Essilor Luxottica 360 for a while now, and it helps us in 3 areas. First, they use social media campaigns to highlight products that we believe in and prescribe to our patients, and they deliver those patients back to our practice. Second, Essilor Luxottica 360 enhances our patient experience through staff training tools that help us simplify and streamline the way we communicate about our products and services. Lastly, but for my practice most importantly, it helps us make good business decisions related to our optical offerings. We will systematically and objectively analyze what our patients are purchasing and what they like, and removing products that our patients are not really using or not really drawn to. This, along with additional rebates and immediate savings, helps us continue to deliver high-quality products and services to our patients and keeps our practice resilient. Check out Essilor Luxottica 360 for yourself by visiting EssilorLuxottica360.com.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's so weird, with all the technology to predict things, and then, you've got this pop-up thunderstorm thing, and it's crazy. Yeah, they just come out of nowhere sometimes, and in some ways, I kind of chuckle because, the meteorologists are pretty smug about, predicting everything these days. But yeah, it's pretty scary sometimes too. And you don't obviously want people to get hurt or lose, their homes. But yeah, they can be pretty big deals sometimes. So anyway, yeah.
I bet there's a bunch of studies, not to bash on meteorology. Kyle Clutie, who is part of iCode, he's actually a meteorologist by his undergraduate trade.
Oh, wow.
And he went to optometry school afterwards. But what I've noticed in in aviation meteorology versus consumer meteorology, the consumer meteorology, my sense is they want you to take action. They want you to have some emotional investment in what they're saying, and so that you come back and check more often. And they don't have to be right that often. They have to just be right enough for you to want to come back. Whereas in aviation meteorology, my sense is they want to give you the facts. and as much as you want them to tell you what to do, they will not tell you what to do. So
Yeah.
even when you call in like 1-800 weather brief, if you were going to call in like the weather briefing station for aviation, you're like, hey, I want to know about this. This is what I'm seeing on the weather briefing. Tell me to do X, Y, and Z. And they'll just kind of re-guide you through it. Well, this is what I'm seeing. This is my interpretation of it. And they're weathermen, and they're really good at it. But they will not tell you go or no go.
Take shelter
That's
or
for
whatever,
you to
yeah.
decide.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is pretty funny. I've kind of noticed that too. It's very, very straight, black and white. Here's what we got.
Yeah.
Do with it
Well,
what
and
you
that
will.
really brings up the point of what I wanted to talk to you today about, which was, you look at what comes out as a report or a study in, a major news headline. And then you wind up fielding questions. I wind up fielding questions from patients, but also questions from other doctors. Like, hey, Chris, what do you tell your patients about this? And the one in particular was from one of the major news networks. We'll just leave them unnamed. I suppose we could link to the story. It's a public story.
Sure.
So let's do it. It was a story in CNN that, Jim, I emailed this to you. Let me read the headline. Unless you have it right up, I can read the headline.
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me, and it was not only CNN, most of the major networks it was on the evening news. All of this. It was kind of a huge deal, and yeah, kind of in some ways horrifying, but we'll clarify.
I mean, it was horrifying. Let me pull this up. Go ahead and just generally describe it, and I'll pull up the headlines for you.
So this was a study that was published very recently by Chen et al. 2024, and it's based on a UK biobank study, which is a large effort. There were over 400,000 participants, and it's kind of a medical record based study. Which can be informative from a very general standpoint, where you take and you evaluate a specific cohort of patients. In this case, it was patients, either healthy patients or those diagnosed with a cardiovascular disease, and their fish oil consumption status. Were you taking fish oil? Were you not? Did you consider yourself a regular fish oil consumer? And that was from data from a 5-year period, 2006 through 2010. The average follow-up with these patients. Now, in between that time, these average follow-up of 12 years, we don't know specifically what people were taking, how much, if they were even taking, fish oil consistently. It was assumed that they were, based on the baseline evaluation from 2006 to 2010, despite the fact 12 years later they got the follow-up. Okay, so there's that. And
so let me pause there. Sorry. So
Sure.
Is there something about, I don't know this answer, but is there something about the potentiality of 2006 and 2010 about what type of omega-3s they might have been taking? Was there lower quality? Was there any less rigor in terms of understanding about what is a good quality, what is not a good quality? There's nothing to gain from that. Is that right?
Well, I appreciate you asking that, and it actually still applies today in terms of fish oil quality. Most people say, and indeed the headline says, fish oil in healthy participants, fish oil supplementation leads to AFib or stroke. Right.
It says fish oil supplements may raise risk of stroke, heart issues, study suggests. So that was the catchy title.
Right, sure.
The only thing they didn't say was shocking finding.
Yeah, right.
Click here.
Fish oil
to find
kills
out.
everybody. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yikes. Yeah, so it's funny because I found out about this story from my parents who were watching the news, and of course they are taking high quality fish oil that we at MacuHealth produce, and they said, well, what's going on, Jim? I mean, this is kind of crazy. Is this real? Is this true? And I said, well, what? I mean, I hadn't even heard about this, so I obviously dug into it. But yeah, the quality of the fish oil, that's been a question for a long time, and it's still a major issue. And it really is forms the crux of the clarification here for this study and for anybody listening to this podcast for sure. Let me put you at ease. First of all, I mean, fish oil quality has a lot to do with this, and again, like I mentioned, the study it has limitations. They're built in, and again, I don't fault the scientists for trying to get information on how fish oil may impact cardiovascular outcomes. However, a little bit flawed in the beginning. Like I said, kind of there's this 12-year window. We don't know exactly what's going on with fish oil, but here's something that we do know. For those people who were diagnosed with a cardiovascular disease and were taking fish oil, there was clear benefit. I mean, the risk reduction was on the order of 15 to 20% of, to progress from, a cardiovascular condition to something worse or mortality, death at the end. So there were clear benefit there. Now, for those that were in the, kind of quote unquote healthy category, they weren't diagnosed with a cardiovascular condition. There was this, 12, 13% risk to get to AFib, atrial fibrillation, this rhythmic heart disorder, of course, and a 5% increased risk to have a stroke. Now, here's a major difference, and we see this. That was in the UK, of course, a study based on this UK biobank. Same story in the United States. Those who are diagnosed with a cardiovascular condition are prescribed fish oil.
Right.
So there is such a thing as prescription fish oil. You may have heard of brands like Lovesa or Vascepa. You see them occasionally on TV. The pharmaceutical grade fish oils, and they're highly regulated. They're considered drugs. So unlike normal dietary supplements, they're regulated by the FDA. So, that means that they have to hit marks in terms of what the contents are, purity, lack of anything, any toxins, popular misconception that fish oil supplements have mercury in them, but they're clear of everything. Mm-hmm. And it's, generally good quality fish oil. So that's one thing. And those folks, of course, benefited, clearly. And we've known from a huge history of fish oil studies that cardiovascular outcomes benefit from consumption of fatty fish. And that goes back to 1971 with Jorn Dyerberg, who studied the Greenland Inuit. And despite the fact of that they ate prodigious amounts of animal fat, it was primarily, fatty fish, seal fat, these kinds of things with super high omega-3s. Really no evidence. You talk to the Minister of Health there, he interviewed him and he said, we've never seen cardiovascular disease. It's crazy in the whole island,
it is.
right? So anyway, okay, getting off track there a little bit. But
no, it's exactly to the point. It's exactly to the point that,
some of the history.
The article misses the entire longevity of evidence. And also the fact that you mentioned that there's fish oils, there's omega-3s that are pharmaceutical grade that have been passed through the FDA and approved to treat cholesterol and other cardiovascular conditions.
So you look at the sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to complete the point from the paper where you've got the cardiovascular patients diagnosed with a condition taking prescription fish oil, and you've got folks on the healthy side, quote unquote, going to the store. And maybe, they're attempting to be a little healthier, incorporate, based on the evidence, is, fish oil into their diet through supplementation. And so that end of things, this, nutritional supplements, again, unregulated by the FDA. And as it turns out, and I've dug really deep, I've done all the legwork here, they can be horrifyingly bad. They can do more harm than good. And I think that, this paper kind of speaks to that. The quality of the fish oil is random. And so when you see, it's highly variable, I should say. When you see, headlines like fish oil does this, it's, not every fish oil is the same. No one, no two are the same. And I've taken fish oil from stores. I've purchased it, a lot of different brands, tested them. And there are a couple of neat ways you can test fish oil. If, those of you listening, you may take a fish oil every day, just as a part of your, sort of nutritional supplement regimen, whatever. And what you can do is you can poke a hole in the fish oil supplement, 3 or 4 pills maybe, squirt it into a styrofoam cup. And it sounds a little silly, but you can do this and just wait. And usually, probably 70-80% of the products that you buy at the store, no joke, they'll start eating the styrofoam cup. they'll dissolve it completely, and it starts
What's the chemical reaction?
well, it's part of it is it's an ethyl ester form of fish oil. So in fish oil processing, the quick and easy way to do it is to hard press the fish oil out. You heat distill it. That separates the EPA and DHA, these omega-3s, which are the sort of molecules that you want in your body that have been shown to do all of the have all of the benefits. It separates them from their natural backbone, the triglyceride backbone, the natural alcohol backbone, and then they get reattached to an ethanol backbone. So it's basically an alcohol backbone. You can pack more of the DHA and EPA onto that ethanol backbone, and so it's advantageous from an industrial processing point of view. You can get more into a pill, and then it's a little cheaper. You don't have to detach it from that and then reattach it to the natural backbone. So you have this what's called a reesterified triglyceride formulation, and so it's about 30 or 40% more expensive to do it that way. However, it's in the natural form. So these ethyl ester forms, which again form about 70 to 80% of the fish oil supplements on the market, you get them, you put them in your body, they detach. They can produce these famous fish burps, acid reflux, many of the major symptoms of fish oil pill consumption. The triglyceride forms, the reesterified triglyceride, you break it off of that ethyl ester, which is a natural. So you still
do the same thing. You squeeze it, then you heat it to get your omega-3s, omega-6s, right? And then you reattach it to the same backbone. So that it's...
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
the difference between your ethyl ester and your reesterified. And that's the cost difference.
Right, the cost difference, that's correct. So in the fish, the natural state, it's triglyceride backbone. So the omega-3s are attached to a triglyceride. Glycerol is the technical term. It's a natural alcohol backbone. Processing the fish, you have to, in every case, get it attached to an ethanol. All right, so it's in that form. You can take it to market like that, or you can then break it off, again, and this is where the cost comes in, reattach it to a glycerol, the triglyceride backbone, and then you can molecularly distill once, twice, up to 5 times to remove all the impurities, extra fats, oxidized fats, these kinds of things. And so
things that'll make it taste weird and have other chemicals in it. Yep.
And leads to more of this, ability to completely eat a styrofoam cup. So as crazy as it sounds, it'll eat half of a styrofoam cup, no joke. And the smell and everything's horrible, but within like an hour or two. Meanwhile, if you have that same fish oil experiment in a styrofoam cup with a reesterified triglyceride supplement that's been distilled and purified, you don't ever see it degrade. I mean, you could leave it in there for a week and you just have the cup and the fish oil. So that's kind of a gee whiz thing, but it's sort of it's pretty telling. Another thing you can do with fish oil is to put it in the refrigerator put some pills in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and you will see in many cases clumps, little white flecks form, and that's saturated fat. These are oxidized lipids, excess fat that's left in, and so that's an indicator of the lack of purity. And so again, a lot of supplements you get at the store, which I think it's safe to assume even the authors in the paper speculate that low quality fish oil may have led to these results. And it's not just me talking or doing crazy experiments at home with styrofoam cups. This was pretty well characterized by a study group out of Brigham and Women's at Harvard University in 2017, where they evaluated the top 3 supplements in the United States. They didn't have any skin in the game. They just wanted to see what's in a fish oil supplement that's very popular. So without naming brands or disparaging other companies or anything like that, they just tested the top 3. And what they found was scary. They found, that the advertised amount on the label was not found in the supplements. It was lower, significantly lower in terms of EPA, DHA, and then they found lots of other fats, saturated fats, a lot of cholesterol. And most importantly, I think they found oxidized LDL. And this is a marker of heart disease. So you do not want to put this in your body. I mean, because that's going to potentially do more harm than good, and most likely it would. So you've got folks that are taking this for cardiovascular health, and they're kind of getting the exact opposite of that. And it makes me angry because, certainly, as the chief scientific officer for MacuHealth, and, part of my charge is to make sure that, we're hitting the mark in terms of, quality and obviously helping people. We take it very seriously, and yet the rest of the industry, a lot of companies anyway, are not. And this is giving us all a bad name. And so, know where you're getting your fish oil, know what it means to have a really high quality fish oil, and you can benefit greatly because the vast majority of the science on this indicates benefits across the board.
Well, it's frustrating. You and I have had this conversation, with the DREAM study as well. But it's frustrating because it puts us as clinicians in a weird spot. On the one hand, we tease through, we search for explanations of this data. We read explanations of the data ourselves, and we come to our specific conclusions. And then we're met with talking to a patient, and you're saying, look, I want you on an omega-3. This is the high quality. So in my practice, so I would love your feedback on how I can do this better. But in my practice, I would say, Mrs. Smith, I'm going to put you on an omega-3 that is going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to use it for this reason, whatever the purpose is. Pick dry eye, pick macular degeneration. And then I'll cite the studies show us that this is what we will expect, but the most important thing is that it's a good quality and it has the right amount of EHA and DPA. And then I'll say, and this is the type that I've already done the research. This is what I'd recommend for you. Maybe I should say this is what I prescribe for you, but this is what I'll say I'd recommend for you. And that's where it stops. Yeah. My thought is, okay, so as a clinician, I've already given a relative. I've given a decent amount of explanation. But if Mrs. Smith says, great, thanks, Dr. Wolfe, I appreciate it. There's a couple different options. One is she'll purchase TG3, actually in our case, she'll purchase TG3, and then she uses it, and et cetera. The other option is she goes out to the front, she decides not to purchase it, and then she goes and kind of finds I can find an omega-3 someplace else, and I'll just grab it from Costco off the shelf, and I can get 1,000 pills for $20, whatever.
Yeah.
And I will never know the difference, because when I come back in and I talk to her, I'll say, well, are you taking your omega-3s? This is my fault, right? So I would say, are you taking your omega-3s? And she might say, yeah, I'm taking them. Every day I'm taking them. I'm not following up by saying, unless I looked at her record to know, did she purchase them from us? Does she continue to purchase them from us? Or is she getting them online, those kinds of things? I don't know. But unless I really push it, and so maybe that's me being lazy, but my assumption is good faith, right? The other side of it is, how much depth do I need to go into on the front end, even beyond this? Is so she walks out. My staff is supposed to do what they're supposed to do with educating the patient, handing them the bottle, charging the patient, and then getting them on some sort of recall system. If that doesn't happen, I'll never know, and it will be very rare for me to actually have that second layer of conversation about the difference between ethyl ester and reesterified and the difference in quality. And so that's frustrating. It's frustrating as a clinician because we're left here with understanding the evidence, but then a situation where our patients may not actually be getting what we think they're getting. And then they come across studies or reports like this that confuse the issue. What can we do better?
CooperVision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today.
My patients with macular degeneration want clear and succinct recommendations from me related to products and solutions that can benefit their long-term ocular health and vision. To do this for my patients, I need to be confident that what I'm recommending will have a benefit to them. And that's why my supplement of choice is MacuHealth. MacuHealth is specifically formulated and clinically proven to rebuild and maximize macular pigment over a lifetime. This results in enhanced visual performance and aids in the treatment and prevention of age-related macular degeneration. I've discussed carotenoid absorption on this podcast with Dr. Nolans and Stringham, and MacuHealth uses a patented process called micromicelle technology. And this technology is clinically proven to increase carotenoid concentrations at the target tissue and deliver the highest level of bioavailability studied to date. MacuHealth has been great for my patients. We really feel like we have the ability to help those patients in all categories of macular degeneration. If you're not utilizing MacuHealth for your patients, check it out for yourself by contacting your MacuHealth representative.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, right? I mean, there's all sorts of levels of this. There's, at the doctor level, of course, you would have to assume that, fish oil is generally good. And even if, up to fairly recently, even if a patient went out and price shopped, fish oil at a place and got some, it's probably going to benefit them okay. It might not be the best, but, it's not going to hurt anybody, right? But now we have evidence that it might. And really, I would have to, for seeing what I've seen and seeing shortcuts that, some companies, take, I would have to say, yes, absolutely, you could do more harm than good. So it raises the seriousness level, and really, I think from a clinician standpoint, the doctor level, probably the best thing you could do is to emphasize, based on, this report that just came out, you see others like it, this, certain thing is promised to do have these great benefits for you, and then another story says, no, it's terrible. To know what's going on there specifically, and, kind of what we're discussing today in terms of fish oil is super beneficial. And so if you are able to say, hey, listen, Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so, this is incredibly important, and in light of, these reports that have come out that suggest that maybe fish oil is not great, for healthy individuals, that's not the takeaway. And, we need to understand differences in quality, and really, you may be doing more harm than good if you go to a big box store or, Walmart or wherever, to get fish oil. It's really important that you take high quality stuff, and here's what I recommend. And then, the staff as well being, kind of spun up on this. I think education, I'm a former professor, and I think education's the answer to everything. And I think that really in this case, it's true. You get people the right information, the truth, basically. And, people say, well, aren't you angry or, upset, horrified, whatever at this report? I'd say no. It's actually great, because it really magnifies the issue. And I think that, once you provide clarity, it's like, that makes sense. Okay, it makes sense. It's unfortunate that maybe many people get hurt, but hey, it's better to get the information out there so we can stop that at least, or turn it around. And so from the provider standpoint, it's complex, but I think it just involves educating everybody across the board, and emphasizing to patients who are rightly confused, telling them the story, what's going on, and giving them the truth.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great. And I think from the last point I'll make, from a confusion standpoint, a week before CNN published, I wanted to get your thoughts on this last one too, which is very similar to what you and I have discussed with the way that our diets are. But just before, a week before that, they published the fish oil supplements may raise risk of stroke, heart issues, study suggests. They release a report that says an imbalance of two healthy fats affects your early death risk, finds study. And those two fats obviously are the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. So do you have any comments about that? And should we be discussing that with our patients in general?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, talk about mixed messages. This study a week before is saying take more omega-3 because omega-3 is, going to balance out this omega-6. And yeah, my gosh, there's a wealth of evidence for that,
Yeah.
this goes back to, again, the very latest, the 1980s, this understanding that more omega-3 relative to omega-6 is much better for, outcomes for cardiovascular health. And then a week later, of course, it's like, whoa, horsey, fish oil might, cause this problem in your heart. Oh, brother. So anyway, but again, assuming that you've got either really, natural, sort of oily fish coming into your diet on a regular basis or high quality fish oil supplements, this idea of having more omega-3 relative to omega-6 or a balanced ratio of the two being healthy is it's an open and shut case. I mean, we know this, and omega-6s have got kind of a bad rap lately in the last couple of years. They're sort of characterized as pro-inflammatory, and yeah, indeed they can be. The really cool aspect of omega-3s is that they can disarm the inflammatory sort of pathway for omega-6s and channel them into beneficial sort of resolving, mediators of inflammation, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's interesting, this ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. Now, we have many natural beneficial sources of omega-6 as well: walnuts, avocado. There are some vegetable oils. And so they are natural and they do have benefits for sure. If you get, you can also get them from fast food, fried foods, processed cookies, crackers, chips, those kinds of things as well. And so as you might imagine, the average American, and in fact, the Western diet has very high levels of omega-6 compared to omega-3s, which we don't get enough of. And so classically, you look back, throughout kind of human evolution, and we see about a 1-to-1 ratio. Omega-3 fats versus omega-6. And that 1-to-1 is carried from like Paleolithic times forward into about the 1800s. Starts to shift a little bit in favor of the omega-6s. You start to see, sort of agriculture come along, and, it's moving a little bit away from fish, oily fish particularly, that kind of thing. So nowadays, it's closer to 20-to-1. Omega-6s to omega-3s. And, and that's not worldwide. That's primarily, sort of United States, Europe, not necessarily all of Europe, but, a lot of it, Western advanced societies. In Japan, you're looking at more of a 3 or a 4-to-1 ratio. So it's, much closer to that 1-to-1. And then, we've got studies, it's like a slam dunk, nearly a perfect correlation between, in terms of, cardiovascular disease mortality. So death from cardiovascular disease. And you've got this relationship that just is nearly a perfect line between omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. So Greenland, some of the, Finland, Scandinavian, Norwegian area, Japan certainly up here, so not as much. It's a very low risk of death versus, you come down a little farther down the slope and you've got, your New Zealand, Australia, and down near the bottom, of course, USA, the UK, and it's, of course, heart disease is the leading cause of death worldwide, and this omega-6 fatty acids are, shown to be a unique contributor to that issue. So yeah, it's again quality, getting it into your diet, balancing things out. Omega-6s are not evil; they can be good for you, but to disarm this arachidonic, the pro-inflammatory pathway, you need omega-3s to convert these molecules into doing something good for you. And it's a neat story. And it goes back to, really the 1980s and 90s when that was first characterized. And, we know a lot about that. And it's frustrating to see different studies come out and say, no, that doesn't work, or this is bad for you, and it's usually some technicality. In this case, with the most recent publication, it's the quality of the fish oil.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably where we should leave the conversation. You mentioned education, and it just dawned on me: does MacuLearn have any modules that our team could watch related to omega-3s and differences and nuances of omega-3s?
That's interesting. I've given a lot of talks on the matter. I was pretty recently up in Alaska providing some CE up there. Alaska of all places, where a lot of the earlier studies were done on the Inuit there, and showing all of this benefit, and I've given some webinars on the matter too, but not really anything in terms of staff training, which I think, yeah, you're right. That would be really sort of timely and important, certainly on this, because I was an ophthalmic tech while I was part-time while I was in graduate school in New Hampshire, and yeah, you end up doing a lot of the talking to the patients, taking histories and discussing, and a lot of times the docs don't have you're going through your steps, and you know how it is. I know you personally take time with your patients, and that's great, but it's not always the case. And so educating, I think, the staff is super important, and in the fact that they're going to be talking a lot with the patients, and there might be where a patient might feel more comfortable asking, maybe a tech, a longer form question than a doctor. It'd be good to arm them with the information for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thanks so much for coming on and setting the record straight. I think it's really helpful to kind of think through that, if you actually do read into the study, there is information that can be helpful, as opposed to just being like, that study can't, it's not going to be applicable, or it's flawed. It's good to be able to point out the flaws, to be able to gain information from the study. And then I think you've made it really clear with our ability to say, we probably need to take the study seriously, as because it does show a potential risk for our patients if we don't take the impetus to have a conversation with them about the differences between omega-3s.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, and I really appreciate this platform to get out and help to clear the air. And to be sure, I don't think this was bad science. I think it's good science in earnest. They were doing their best. It's just that even in science, in sort of research that might not be the best design, or might not be able to control all the variables, you still get information, and so that's kind of how science works. And a lot of times it's weird little findings, mistakes, things that come out that really give us the most information. And so I think that we don't all have a lot of time in our lives to read full research studies. That's kind of what I'm here for. That's what I do. But the headline, it can shock you sometimes, and it can be misleading. And so I think in this case it was because there's a lot more to the story.
Yeah, awesome. Jim Stringham, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Chris. My pleasure.